I'm constantly being told that it's all just talk. Why aren't they being put in jail? The thing is, in dictatorships, it's easy to put someone in jail. It's not hard to execute them or to exile them or to arrest their family. But for some reason, we don't want it to be easy to arrest people. And without a trial, or quickly punish them, just the way the leader wants. That's usually how it happens. The United States of America is what's called a democratic republic. And that means everything written in the law from A to Z must be followed. And to punish, to strike down, to destroy, what was very difficult is done on purpose. Right now, we're in white while others are in the dirt, but tomorrow we could be the ones in the dirt. That's why you do everything by the book, everything written in the law, and you don't rush. In 2017, a congressional staff member, a former intelligence officer, contacted the FBI with a report that then Congress member from the California Democratic Party, Adam Schiff, was leaking classified information to the press solely to harm the President of the United States, Trump. The famous John Solomon talked about this on Hannity's show on Fox. I've already told you about John.
He is one of our leading investigative journalists. Listen, this informant was literally sitting at the meeting, he says. He reports to the FBI that Adam Schiff authorized the leak of classified information to smear Donald Trump and try to create either a special committee in Congress or a special prosecutor. This whistleblower was a career intelligence officer. He worked on the Democratic staff of the House Intelligence Committee for 12 years. He contacted the president and gave 4 interviews, sharing detailed classified information with the FBI since the Department of Justice refused to handle it. How many times in the past decade have we heard, we will deal with this classified information leak, and then a few months later, we couldn't deal with this classified information leak? What do you see? In the case of Adam Schiff, they dealt with some classified information leaks, but the Department of Justice decided not to take action. Tonight, the Attorney General and former Attorneys General like Merrick Garland, Jeff Sessions, and Rod Rosenstein, who worked on the Russia case, were asked key questions. Did they know about the Adam Schiff case, and why did they let it proceed? And will anything happen in the current Department of Justice?
The employee met the FBI 4 times and gave detailed, specific information. It was clearly a crime with no other explanation. But none of the attorneys general, neither Republican nor Democrat, opened a case. Sessions, Barr, Merrick Garland, Loretta Lynch, they all swept this case under the rug.
In this case, a witness in the room with Adam Schiff was able to pass it on to the FBI. Akash Patel gave these documents to Congress, which is good news. By the way, this is the first of several major leak investigations that we will see in the next few days. You'll see other key people the FBI has identified as classified info leakers. Their own staff implicated them during FBI questioning. Again, nothing happened. This is the usual pattern. Now the question is whether this dynamic will change. The Department of Justice under Donald Trump.
But it turns out that staffers from Congress, the Department of Justice, and even from the Democratic National Committee, repeatedly went to the FBI and brought evidence of similar crimes committed by several high-ranking Democrats. What was happening? Did it continue? Some were told, "Be quiet, we'll handle it, just go," while others were quietly pushed out of their jobs. Semkin, proofreader Yegorova, SETA. Richard, for example, was simply killed by a shot in the back. He was suspected of passing information about Hillary Clinton to Johnny Podesta, even to WikiLeaks. Oh, a terrible crime. During the period of Democrat dominance in communications and mass media in Washington, a group of young people emerged. Journalists who called themselves Project Veritas, meaning Project Truth. If you remember the famous In Vino Veritas by the Roman writer Pliny, I think the elder, there were 2 of them, I believe. It means truth in wine. The journalists, disguised and with hidden cameras, went to officials, politicians, party bosses, union leaders, pimps, gangsters, and prostitutes, And because they behaved in a certain way and in some places acted a certain way and so on, they were seen as insiders and often let slip secrets that no one was supposed to know. Let's talk now about their months-long execution. The investigation of former United States Attorney General Bill Barr.
Hello. My name is Patricia Lellis. I'm a journalist and I've been working in politics for a long time. In 2018, I married an American, and that's how I moved to the United States and started working as a journalist in the United States. I started working for Armstrong Williams in 2021, and I was hired as a journalist for his television stations. I worked for Armstrong, and I met Armstrong Williams through David Smith, the owner of Sinclair Broadcast Group, Armstrong Williams. He works in politics. He claims to be a journalist. He owns several television stations. He is also a lobbyist. And it's very hard to say who Armstrong Williams is, because to this day, I don't have an answer to that question for you.
After a couple of months, Armstrong transferred her to a more, as he said, responsible job. Armstrong. Wealthy foreigners who want to get a visa or the right to reside in the United States. Armstrong was a lobbyist whose clients were local and foreign customers.
The first contact I had with Armstrong's lobbying work was through the visa lobbying he was working on. For Julian's parents,
Raisa Mena.
Peter and Vivian Julian is a billionaire, and he is not American. Now he lives in the United States because he has a visa, which he also got through Armstrong. But I wasn't working for Armstrong at that time. Armstrong Williams offered me $700,000 just for Julian's visa.
That's an impressive amount, ladies and gentlemen. Usually the cost is from $12,000 to $20,000, from $12,000 to $20,000.
Yes, we really did discuss this. He offered me $700,000 just for working on the Julian Wiesen case, and I have contracts for that. So I remember I had a project that he wanted me to take, like $1.5 million or like $1,130,000. And I was like, listen, I'm not really comfortable with this because you know how
I'll explain.
And all the time he says something like, no, it's because you're not from here, because you don't understand the system, you don't understand the business. And that's how much it costs to have a visa, to live in the United States. And that's what he offered me. And in the end, he didn't want to sign a contract. But I said, listen, I'll start working on this only if I have a contract. And then, after long talks, he finally agreed to sign the contract.
So far, it sounds like a fairy tale.
All the payments were made by Julian directly to my bank account, as we specified in the contract. So, my role was to focus on the business plan and put everything together so that Armstrong and his friends could send it to
the government. I
met Clyde Vanell through Armstrong, who always called himself Armstrong's lawyer. He also represents House Stock Holdings. We call it the House Stock Holdings Company. And Clyde is always involved in everything. He always seems to be aware of everything. I think Clyde has now been elected in New York. In everything I did, I was under Clyde Vanell's supervision most of the time. He's kind of the person who tells me what to do and how to do it, or for example, who I need to contact. So he's always there. He's always involved in everything, every single thing.
Armstrong's partner was Bill Barr. Bill is the very one who guaranteed his ultra-wealthy clients that any case he took on would be resolved to their satisfaction.
The company. So basically, they create a fake company, which I helped them set up, and they never actually launched that company. These companies don't have any real operations, and that's illegal. I only realized after many situations that every person lies to the governments for visas. They sell companies as if they're for the public. Like, oh, I'm going to create this big company, and we talk about all these rich people and billionaires together. And when we look at the files, after all these people got their green cards or visas, they never actually work at the company they were supposed to open and work at. This company is completely fake. It doesn't exist.
A bogus company was created, a business plan was written for it, and there was funding in the bank. The United States government was told that we would be creating jobs, employing Americans, and producing goods needed in America. Bill Barr would take these documents somewhere, get the necessary certificates and permits, and then the company that was created would be forgotten for the rest of its life. Of course, the bank's money was spent again.
And then I started to realize that every visa we worked on in the office was probably fraudulent. Bill Barr knows that the companies they set up for the visas weren't real companies. Because after Julian's parents got their visas, I saw him and said, you know, we need to start working at this company and do everything. And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. Everything will be fine. Armstrong and Bill Barr had a contact inside the government. I think this guy's name was Jonathan Cohen's. As far as I understand, everyone who works for Armstrong and Bill Barr, everyone knew, everyone knows, like, the company was fake. But one thing they take into account is that after you got approval, after you got
the visa, the government
doesn't check if you actually work at your company. You know, if you started the company, they don't check. That's why they always count on that. It's much easier to deceive the immigration system and the government than people think. And I have proof of that because that's exactly what Armstrong and Bill Barr are doing, and Bill Barr is doing it.
This isn't just a petty crime, it's a repeated multi-million-dollar fraud against the United States Federal Service. It's punishable, and it's punished seriously. Barr and Williams got scared. They thought they had bought the girl, especially since she wasn't American, which, from their point of view, meant she would easily lie, deceive, and sell herself for money. They later wrote to the KDR saying, "You're Latino, so why act like this? You're Latino." A resident of Latin America, I think she's from Mexico if I'm not mistaken, turned out, oh horror, to have morals and a conscience, and she went to the FBI. What did Barr Tudge report about? And that's how it started.
Very
easy to understand.
Why I'm being persecuted while no one else is being accused or persecuted, it's very easy. I reported Billy Barr and Armstrong Williams to the FBI. I have records of every meeting. One meeting might be about a visa for someone, another about January 6th or Rick's case. I have a quote like, Barr thinks the FBI will soon be at Trump's house. And one thing I often heard was how they were going to prevent Trump from coming back to America. One thing I realized very quickly and very early on is that Bill Barr is someone extremely important. And I remember, like, the biggest conversation they were having at that moment was like, what charge can we bring here?
A good attorney general in all the American administrations I can remember right now was probably the president's closest advisor and friend. Let's remember that Kennedy, for example, appointed his younger brother to this position, and this defender was coming up with ways to slander Trump so that he could never become president again. This is called a cover, meaning a cover for shadow operations. Bill Barr provided cover and shelter for fraudsters and thieves. Well, just like they said Hunter Biden provided cover for prostitutes from Russia. And for that, he received, at least once, $3 million from Baturina. That's why, as soon as Patricia, that's the name of this girl, Patricia, contacted the FBI, Barr was informed about it. She was asked to hand over all the documents, evidence, recordings, everything she had. But she already understood then that this was her only protection. She was bombarded, persuaded, pressured, threatened. They even told her that her green card would be revoked. And
then at those meetings, I started taking notes and trying to keep everything to prove what was happening. One thing I understood very well is that Bill Barr and Armstrong, and all the politicians too, are very focused on how they're going to stop Trump. And one thing I often heard was how they were going to prevent Trump from coming back to America.
That is, everything that happened with Trump's court cases between the first and second terms was planned as a single operation on different fronts, with different charges, with different prosecutors. And all of this was made up. But there are so many of them that, from their point of view, either Trump was supposed to break down, or the people would believe that there's no smoke without fire. All right.
At this meeting, we also talked about the meeting we had with Facebook and about the person at Facebook who was helping us and giving us guidance on creating content. Against Trump and against January 6th, his name was Danielle.
On social networks, a whole program of leaks and hints, deceptions, and falsifications was being prepared regarding Trump himself and the demonstrations, supposedly violent and, so to speak, with unrest. The demonstrations of January 6, 2020 in Washington. By the way, I had a few acquaintances there, and their stories were strikingly different from what television told us, what was written in newspapers, and what was discussed on social networks.
It was kind of one of the first meetings about the plan they developed to go after everyone who works for or supports Trump. And it was September 13, 2021.
In 2021, did the Democrats and pseudo-Republicans actively start preparing lawsuits against everyone who could help Trump return to the White House? They didn't care whether it was true or not, whether it was legal or not, or whether it was good for the country or not. They were just protecting their own bowl of rich, hot food. That was all they cared about.
At that meeting, it was me, Armstrong, Shermichael, and Bill Barr on the phone, and they were talking about the January 6th committee. They authorized the committee to investigate the events of January 6th. We kind of started with some names. They also gave a lot of names here. And here I have a quote. It was something like this. Barr and Cheney once focused on Roger Stone, Rozzatario, and Benany, as well as on Kimberly Guilford, who is close to Trump, appointed.
Nancy Pelosi, committee investigating alleged crimes, January 6th. And the conspirators from Williams' office plus Bill Barr were setting traps. Well, legal traps for Trump's circle. That is, not even politicians, just friends, just his close circle, friends and acquaintances. Armstrong Williams persuaded people to come to where he knew their lives. A trap awaits at Capitol Hill on January 6th. He hosts a radio show and podcasts. He fakes supporting Trump, but
these people are there simultaneously. Because people like Armstrong told them to be there, told them, no, it's okay if you're here. And when things start happening there, Armstrong says, no, we can go in and let's have you do it. So what kind of person does that to people? Can I
answer, dear Patricia, to this question? What kind of people are they? Who act like that? The answer is simple. 2 words, scum and bastards. That's how scum and bastards act. I've been saying for a long time that those who are against Trump today are either brainwashed idiots or scum and bastards. And in addition to that, only people who are not quite psychologically healthy. When they can't control their actions, their emotions go beyond any control they might have over themselves, so to speak, over themselves. What do they do with control? To create or establish control over themselves? I'm not sure if that's the right way to say it. When she started trying to unravel the web of intrigue, Patricia explained that the conspirators had unregistered phones, without an owner, without a name, which were destroyed from time to time and replaced with burners, and politicians, conspirators, prosecutors, donors. They had a communication network beyond the possibility of being monitored. And then she got a message on her phone already. I know what you're doing, and this is bad for you. It will end. then I will end your life. Anyone who gets in my way will be destroyed. And then we know that you're talking to the Prosecutor General's office. And how did they know all this, just like me? Directly from the FBR and the Prosecutor General's office. This is
Very simple. I called the Federal Bureau of Investigation to report Billy Barr and Armstrong Williams, these influential friends. Someone paid him to install like a television, and it's so easy to launder money. I spoke with Bill Barr, Finavis, Qatar, Turkish Airlines, the Turkish ambassador many times. And so, for example, I end up mailing things for Finavis since I have her address and a great phone number. It's like he's telling me that some driver from Qatar will bring something and ask me not to open it. When I started to kind of realize what was happening, I thought that I needed to have proof of everything I was saying. One day I went to the office and took the phones that we used to call some politicians and other people. When he realized that I had taken all those phones and all my records, because he also wanted my records and everything else, he started kind of sending me death threats, Patricia.
says that the threats to her life were sent by Armstrong Williams. It seems he wasn't the only one. And it seems that after the murder of Seth Rich, under similar circumstances, and the deaths of more than 80 people from Clinton's circle, we should take threats from politicians in the Washington swamp seriously.
Soon I realized that it's kind of just about corruption and power. And I've already seen a lot of corruption, a lot of power struggles in Latin American countries. But it was never like what I saw in Armstrong's office. They don't have lawyers for the people who work with them. They don't have lawyers for their own country. For example,
at the meetings, they discussed how to transfer money from both Turkey and Qatar to American politicians. As you can imagine, not because of the politicians' good looks. We've
been using a disposable phone since I started working for Armstrong. It's something very common in the office. Everyone uses a disposable phone to call politicians or anyone else. When I started to realize what was happening, I thought I needed proof of everything I was talking about. I need to be able to prove things, like notes. I need to keep names, numbers, laugh out loud addresses, anything I can to prove what I'm talking about. But even on disposable phones, there are, for example, addresses and phone numbers of people we talk to. For example, this one is for Fanny Will, which means we use these disposable phones only to talk to her. I have a disposable phone that we used to call Baru, or a disposable phone that I think we used to call Knight and Wade. And that's how I ended up with these disposable phones. I have one from Qatar, so I started using disposable phones. In 2021, I took the disposable phones and kept them with me when I decided to report to the FBI. Sweethearts.
kind, good people dreaming of a good life for Americans. Of course they dreamed they wouldn't hurt a fly, wouldn't steal a fig leaf. Always tell the truth and nothing but the truth, nothing else. Here they are, those who accuse us, who say that we are against democracy. Here they are saying this. Barr launched an operation to neutralize Patricia. How she survived, I personally don't understand, but somehow she did. We, the taxpayers, were paying for surveillance on Patricia, the hours of the staff who accompanied her, analysts, agents. Now they're investigating in Bombard. This is exactly what Armstrong and Barr are doing. They've been having some stomach problems lately. I think they're both considering running away to Qatar or Turkey. Brave girl Patricia Oliveira Levis, thank her for her courage and honesty. Many people sell out for even less money. In 200 days in the White House, Trump managed to extinguish several hotspots of violence on the international stage. Trump began a new great process of changing our civilization. shifting us from solving issues by force to solving issues through economic pressure or incentives. Listen to Tammy Bruce, who is predicted to have a great future in the administration and among presidents.
This achievement follows the coordinated peace agreements between Cambodia and Thailand, Israel and Iran, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, India and Pakistan, Egypt and Ethiopia, as well as Serbia and Kosovo. In addition to the remarkable achievement of the Abraham Accords. By the way,
a message has just come in that Tammy is moving to work as the Deputy Representative of the United States at the United Nations. Mike Walls, the former assistant to the President for National Security Affairs, has become the representative. But something tells me that Tammy is there as a backup and to eventually become the United States representative. And here is the briefing at the White House. Then see.
On Friday morning, President Trump will travel across the country to Anchorage, Alaska, for a bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. A brutal war between Russia and Ukraine broke out under the incompetent leadership of Joe Biden, but President Trump is determined to try to end this war and stop the killing. As the president has repeatedly said, his strong preference will always be for peace and partnership. When can these results be expected? At present, there is no leader in the world who is more committed to preventing wars or ending them than President Donald Trump. Just look at what happened here at the White House last Friday, when President Trump welcomed the President of Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of Armenia. And he achieved having the two leaders sign a historic joint declaration on peace, putting an end to a years-long conflict that had destabilized the region and claimed countless lives. In other news, we continue to see positive economic reports across the board. Today's Consumer Price Index report showed inflation again surpassed expectations and remains steady. Overall, inflation averaged 1.9% year over year. In President Trump's first 6 months, everyday goods prices kept falling. Energy prices fell in July, including gasoline, which dropped by almost 10% compared to last year, and propane, which also decreased by 25% compared to last year. Egg prices fell again in July and have decreased by 20% since President Trump took office. Housing inflation, the main driver of overall inflation, is at its lowest since October 2021. Wage growth for American workers is once again outpacing inflation. As inflation decreases, this administration remains fully committed to putting more money back into the pockets of Americans across the country. It has grown by 1.3% compared to last year and has been increasing every month since President Trump took office. And small business optimism, according to today's report, has also reached a 5-month high. Ignore the alarmists and trust President Trump. That's our motto here at the White House. The America First economic agenda is working.
House wants us to expect less. Like, don't expect any conclusions, don't expect any agreements or plans. This is a mediators meeting with one of the parties to get an idea of what Russia wants and what Russia is offering. I think that's complete nonsense. Sorry, yes. There have been video calls, lengthy talks, and clarifications via intermediaries like Dmitriev and Vitkov. Yeah, there was all sorts of stuff. I think there is. There was one problem that prevented everything from working out. Russia had no desire to end the war because they thought it was beneficial for them to drag it out. So there are many benefits to continuing and almost no drawbacks. So what if another 25,000-30,000 soldiers die, whether they're from a remote region or not? Vladimir Vladimirovich doesn't care. But here something happened that made Vladimir Vladimirovich ask Trump for a meeting. So we can hope that there is a desire or some reason to end the war. And it appeared. I really hope it's serious, because otherwise all of this will just be not much pressure. There won't be any major concessions. At such meetings, they either work on finalizing the last 10% of the agreement, the arrangements. They either finalize some things or they just come to puff themselves up. But this doesn't seem like that kind of situation. So, as I said before, they're either working out the last few percent, Or maybe Putin and Trump need to talk about something without worrying that the world will find out. Or maybe they want the agreement to have two parts. Putin and the Russians want one part to be public and the other to be secret. They've done this more than once before, starting with Hitler and many, many other times. But Carol Levitt said that it's just to listen. Therefore, it may be about something that Putin wants to say or hear from Trump personally, one-on-one, nose-to-nose. Maybe a guarantee that America will take him in when he needs to flee from Russia, or maybe the opposite. He dug up some dirt on Trump and now came out to scare him, and Trump agreed to listen. We can't even guess what this actually means. One thing is clear, Zelensky does not need to be there. It's absolutely not his business. He's hanging on, but he's not ready to fight. A springtime negotiator, he'll bring emotion into the conversation, which is exactly what you need to avoid at these, and by the way, any
Other negotiations?
It's emotions. Interesting, right? Ukrainian internet is once again full of hatred towards Trump. Can someone explain this to me? The only person who wants to stop the war for them, they hate him for it. But the leadership and elite of Ukraine are ready to lose the war, to fall under the yoke, so to speak, of Putin's Russia. I would even say not Russia, but Putin's O0 cooperative. They would rather drive the whole country to ruin than let Trump succeed in what he wanted to do, in this case, to stop the war. Just so that Trump doesn't succeed in stopping the war, we are ready to sacrifice everything, throw all our children in and give away our entire homeland, as long as Trump doesn't succeed. I carefully read what they write in Russian and translate it when it's in Ukrainian. Google translates awkwardly but accurately. That's astonishing. And what about this phenomenon? If half of America didn't wish harm on their country, Trump wouldn't have succeeded. So if building a more productive and safer society, then I would say that's a national trait of Ukrainians. But it turns out that the desire to make things worse for yourself just so that some person you hate, not even a group of people, also suffers, is actually there. That's clearly a universal quality. Homo sapiens, gentlemen. Below is a link to my book for free, the continuation, and a link for sponsorship. It's $4 a month or more, which will be very helpful for the channel. 100% of your donations have gone, are going, and will go towards the technical maintenance of the channel. And now, thank you so much for listening. Really, thank you for listening. People write very nice things to me, and it's really pleasant, I'll be honest with you. But I think the most important thing would be to try to share these videos. You know, what they call share on the internet, right? Send them to friends, acquaintances, and in general, post them in some groups. Because the more people clearly understand what's happening, I'm not imposing my point of view. Yes, I have one and I share it, but I'm not forcing it on anyone. I tell you what's happening, and then I share my own perspective. And a huge number of people have no idea what's going on. They just ask, what's happening? Sometimes I appear on channels there, on Ukrainian ones. Well, I mean, I speak Russian, but, you know, Ukrainian channels, Russian language channels in other countries and so on. Usually when I check the comments later, they say, he's lying or he's making things up. But I just stick to the facts, that's what I do. All right, goodbye. I've been talking for a long time, so let's say our goodbyes. Until next time, see you.